Hello and welcome to a Straight Talk Short. These are going to be little segments that we roll into you through our election night coverage. My name is Steven Barhorst, JP Remages, Charlie Convery. We have a very exciting short for you now. Our first topic is, how did we get here? Now, this has been one of the most contentious political election cycles in not just recent history. We had 16 Republican candidates and a Democratic nomination that came down right to the wire. There were people chanting Bernie in the halls of the Democratic Convention. And both parties just had a serious airing of dirty laundry, whether it was the multitude of inflammatory statements that Donald Trump made to the airing of every Clinton scandal under the sun, especially some having to do with emails. There has been a lot of animosity during this political season, and that really just takes us to the question, how did we end up in this position where we have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? JP, we'll start with you.
Well, I can tell you for certain that from the Republican side of things that it can be directly attributed to the fact that we had almost 20 candidates running for president. I think it's fair for people to be upset at Washington. It's fair for people to be frustrated with the electorate and, who their representatives are and what they're doing or lack thereof, I guess. And I think that Donald Trump played the right cards in the primaries in terms of Congress is screwing you, your representatives are screwing you. But I think he took it to such an extent, and I'll give him credit, he said what he needed to, and by doing that it was oftentimes offending people, saying bombastic things, and that got him notoriety, and it got him a lot of people that are just frustrated with the government and how things are going. And I think that if you had any other year, 2012, 2008, where the primary field is 3, 4, 5 candidates, tops, there is no chance that Donald Trump would have been the Republican nominee. It's only because, and you look at, I think you give or take 2 or 3 states, I don't believe Donald Trump ever won more than 50% of the popular vote in a primary. It was just the fact that the other, 75, 60% of the vote was spread out among 10 other candidates. So there was no chance that any of them were ever going to rally behind a singular opposition to Donald Trump. If you had a Marco Rubio, a John Kasich, I think anybody in the Republican field, give or take Ted Cruz and Ben Carson, any of the other nominees, I think would have easily defeated Hillary Clinton.
Well, that argument is certainly made. There was some leaked Podesta emails that indicated that the Hillary camp was scared of Marco Rubio. They thought he was a very, very dangerous threat, and they thought that Rand Paul, of course, dropped out during the Iowa primaries, that Rand Paul was a serious threat due to his I wouldn't say expediency, but the fact that most of his platform was accepted by some Democrats, and they like him. He's currently leading in Kentucky for his Senate re-election, and he's taking a substantial number of Democrats. Charlie, what do you think?
Well, like JP said, I think that the Democratic Party kind of didn't even notice Trump when he first announced that he was going to run.
Well, the Republicans didn't even notice.
Exactly. You look on the internet and people are like, oh, this is hilarious, like Donald Trump, and then it's like, all right, when's the joke gonna end? And then now, kind of here we are.
Now it's a nightmare.
Now it's a nightmare. But I think what it also comes down to is kind of the two-party system that we've worked ourselves into, where it's rather Democratic or Republican, and that's it. If there was going to be any year that America would have gone third party, it should have been this year. People are like, oh, I hate both candidates. And it's like, yeah, but there are others, but no one is accepted, and they're kind of afraid to vote for someone who isn't their party, because then they'll see as a vote for a third party as a vote for the enemy, or a vote away from their candidate for their traditional party. And I mean, like JP said, the Republican Party had almost 20 different candidates. Yeah. And Donald Trump rarely took more than half. And if it had come down to two nominees, I don't think Donald Trump could have taken it. If there had been any other year, it wouldn't have worked. And we've kind of just worked ourselves into this rigid system of it's rather left or right, and that's it. And you need to kind of vote left or right or no one at all. But one good thing out of this election is that apparently that we're going to have a lot of voters, which is good because in the past years we've only seen decreasing voters. I mean, out of any Democratic government, we're the third lowest of voter turnout, and that's appalling, especially for the United States.
And that's not to say that like Kasich and Rubio or anybody else for that matter is a perfect candidate. It's just the fact that, I mean, they're conservatives in and of themselves, but they're definitely more moderate than Trump. But even I think Mike Pence, who is incredibly conservative on all fronts, fiscally, socially, more than many of the candidates in the field. But even Mike Pence, you can't argue with the guy's character and you can't argue with his genuineness. You get people like that, even if I think a lot of people, even if you don't agree with his policy, a lot of the criticism of Trump versus Clinton is his character. I guess his character, but also his temperament. And will he be able to effectively serve as commander-in-chief, as the figurehead for our country, with his sudden outbursts of emotion, his anger, his inflammatory comments? And I think even if you have a candidate who you disagree with, but is a much more trustworthy and level-headed candidate, you're gonna most likely vote for them. Like even if you'd put them up against Hillary Clinton, like a lot of progressives really like Hillary Clinton, a lot of Democrats really like Hillary Clinton, but there's a lot of people in between. I think in the independents, the undecideds, a lot of them are going for Hillary not because they're enthused with her as a candidate. She's got all sorts of baggage of her own that has definitely not gone unnoticed. But it's just the fact that what Trump has said and some of the things he's proposed has been very just shifting him away from drawing a lot of the middle of the ground voters.
Yeah, and another thing is that, the fact that people are having to pick the lesser of two evils in this election, which we haven't really seen before. It seems that most of America doesn't like either candidate, and we're kind of being forced to choose between the two. And I mean, even with Trump's appalling comments, it's also that what I've noticed watching the debates and some of his speeches, or actually mostly the debates, is that most politicians do dodge questions if they don't like it, but he flat out dodges almost every question. That's what I've noticed, that it jumps straight to ISIS or what she's done. I haven't really seen one actual solid policy come out of him besides the wall, which isn't really that feasible.
45% tariff rate against Chinese imports, which is just inflammatory in and of itself.
I mean,
I don't even want to think about that. But then, I mean, you see Hillary Clinton, you say, okay, in the past, I've disagreed with Mitt Romney's platform. I've disagreed with John McCain's platform. But I've never questioned their character, and I've never questioned their fitness to be the president. And I can say the same thing about President Obama. I disagree with most of what his policy and what he's attempted to do, but he's a genuine guy, and I think I'd much rather have his persona in office than a lot of other candidates. I mean, specifically ones that we have right now.
And going back to choosing the lesser of two evils, and to your point, third-party candidates, a lot of these third-party candidates just haven't impressed at all. Jill Stein, who is seen as sort of the inheritor of the Bernie vote, she was quoted as saying that vaccines cause autism and multiple other statements. I believe she said that once that TVs cause global warming.
She also had a folk band in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's appalling.
Yeah. And then for Gary Johnson, he came across as, even though his policies, most of the people, I would assume, just me saying this, but I assume that most people would agree with his actual policies. Yeah. He just comes across as he doesn't know anything about the situation. Of course, we all talked about his Aleppo gaffe, and we all talked about how he can't name a foreign leader. But it just comes across that while his policies are something that people could get behind, he just doesn't seem like he knows enough. No. Yeah. And therefore, it's not so much the lesser of two evils. Most people don't like the other two guys either, and most people don't know who Darrell Castle is. Darrell Castle is a Constitution Party candidate. And then
Evan McMullin.
Yeah, Evan McMullin, who's a write-in candidate on most ballots. The only place that he's actually on the ballot is polling really well in is Utah. We'll cover that in another one of these shorts. But it just seems that we're picking from the lesser of four evils just because everyone doesn't like not only the two major party candidates, but also the two third-party candidates. Well, the two most prominent third-party candidates.
Well, I mean, especially with this election, we've kind of set a new low of judging candidates almost entirely off personal character, too. You don't really see many people, or at least I haven't, who are Trump supporters who attack Hillary's policies or her plans. They attack that she's a crooked Hillary who deletes the emails. And same with when I see people trying to attack Trump, it's mostly like what he's said, not that he actually has any policies. And I mean, we're in a presidential election where during a debate, they interrupt one another and just say like wrong or like, oh, that's absurd. And we've never seen that before. You know, it's been very like formal and actually like respect one another. But I mean, they don't even shake hands anymore. Like it's come down to literally strict character. Like candidates who can't even remember Aleppo, we don't attack anything besides that. You know, I mean, it's gotten
to the
degrading.
point where Trump he's got the 45% tariff against Chinese imports. He's going to build the wall. It's gotten to the point where I was looking at like a Newsweek or a Time magazine, one of those T-charts that they put out outlining the policies of different candidates, and it's like economy, social issues, foreign policy, and it literally said Trump says he will, quote, bomb the hell out of ISIS as his official policy on ISIS. I mean, not like, all right, we're going to mobilize, 20,000 forces in Aleppo and we're going to try to, attack this, ISIS presence in Aleppo. He's literally saying we're going to bomb the hell out of ISIS, which is, is a concept, that's kind of, I guess, something you could get behind, and I don't disagree with it, but if you're going to, make a blanket statement, you got to have some, substance to it.
Well,
and
I think
something to back it up.
Trump, where Trump's power kind of comes from is the blanket statements that don't actually have statistics, they don't have any economic backing, and yet the base of Donald Trump is uneducated, older white males. That's his base, and I feel like for a lot of them, you don't need statistics, you don't need an actual specific idea of what you're going to do. It's just, we're going to bomb the hell out of them. And they're like, all right, yeah, I'm on board. Like, let's go bomb them.
And I think you get the problem here is you see Hillary's drawing considerably better with women, Trump the same with men. The difference is, with the prospect of having your first woman president, the demographics of that far better play into Hillary's camp, because I think, at least this is what I've observed, with the millennial vote, we as a generation, I think, are far less concerned about voting for Hillary specifically because she's a woman. Like, we as a generation aren't concerned about we think it'll happen. We're not worried about that.
Yeah.
But we don't turn out to vote. So that's definite. I mean, thus saying that, we would, I think, be more inclined to vote for somebody that's not Hillary Clinton, specifically on their gender, and that's, favors her because, the people that aren't concerned about that aren't going to turn out to vote. But then also you get the people that are going to vote for Hillary Clinton because they're appalled with what Trump has said. And I think that you're going to get far more men to defect to her side because of what she has said than you're going to get women to his side because of things that she's done. So you're going to get a lot more previously Trump supporting women to go to her side than you're going to get previously Hillary supporting. Is this kind of, I mean, it kind of makes
more sense. I mean, also, Hillary hasn't really attacked any sort of demographic besides his actual base, which then she recalled the basket of deplorables, right? But then Trump has actually gone out and specifically attacked demographics, even women in certain cases, but we're talking about that later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've gotten
so that pushes a lot more to her
like
side.
minority votes, like the Hispanic vote, the African American vote, almost always, not even almost always go to the Democratic side. And the fact that he has sort of alienated those groups certainly is not going to help the Republican chance at getting. He needed to draw from that, not push it farther away, which is something he struggled with. He's gone out and actually targeted like white people.
Yeah, no, every time I watch one of the debates, I thought like, okay, you see Hillary doing it. She's trying to expand her voter base to other demographics, but Trump does not. He just doesn't care. He sticks to his base, and he just kind of mixes around in it. Like all of his statements, Hillary brings up specific instances of her being like with a Latino family or things like that, and Trump doesn't even try. He just sticks to what he knows, and he keeps pushing forward.
And that's going to have to be the last word. Thank you for a spirited discussion. This is the end of our first Straight Talk Short, and let us be the first to welcome you back to your election night coverage. We'll see you soon.